The portfolio felt heavy in my hands, not because of the weight of the cardstock, but the weight of my hope. I'd poured weeks into this, evenings and weekends, fueled by lukewarm coffee and the desperate need to prove something. To myself, mostly. But to Olivia, too. Her validation had become the sun I orbited. "So, this is it," I said, laying it on our polished, minimalist coffee table. Our apartment was all Olivia, sleek, modern, a little cold, like a magazine spread. Sometimes I felt like an out-of-place, slightly worn armchair in the corner. Olivia, a vision in her tailored, work-from-home loungewear, leaned forward. Her blonde hair, always perfect, cascaded over one shoulder. She flipped through the pages, her expression unreadable. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was my passion, my soul laid out in vector graphics and carefully chosen typefaces. A series of branding concepts for fictional companies, a music festival poster that I thought sang with energy, a minimalist app interface I was particularly proud of. Silence stretched. The hum of the city outside our expensive window felt deafening. Finally, she looked up, a small, polite smile on her lips. "It's nice, Dan." Nice. The word landed like a thud. "But," she continued, her head tilting slightly, "is it professional enough? I mean, for a real agency. Some of these fonts are a bit playful, and the color palettes, while vibrant, might not appeal to corporate clients." Devastation. It was a quiet, creeping thing, starting in my chest and spreading outwards, chilling my fingertips. "Oh," I managed. "I was going for something. Innovative. Different." "Different is good, honey," she said, patting my hand. Her touch felt distant. "But there's a line. You want to be taken seriously, don't you?" "Don't you?" The unspoken question hung in the air. "Are you serious enough for me?" I first met Olivia 2 years ago. It was at the annual Christmas party for the marketing agency where I worked, a soul-crushing place called Synergy Solutions. My job title was junior graphic designer, but mostly I just resized banners and tweaked PowerPoint presentations until my eyes burned. I was tucked away in a corner, nursing a warm beer, feeling like a background character in my own life. Then she walked in. Olivia Reed. She wasn't even with our company, but a guest of one of the VPs. She was a marketing executive at a much larger, much more prestigious firm. She commanded attention without trying, her laughter echoing, her movements graceful. She was, in a word, dazzling. She'd somehow ended up in my quiet corner, asking for directions to the restroom. We started talking, or rather, she talked, and I listened, mesmerized. She spoke of campaigns, of strategies, of a world so far removed from my banner resizing existence. I told her, hesitantly, about my own aspirations, the designs I doodled in my notebooks. She'd smiled, a genuine, encouraging smile that made my stomach flip. "You have an artist's soul, Daniel," she'd said. It was the first time anyone had called me Daniel in years, and it felt significant. Being with Olivia felt like I'd won a lottery I didn't even know I was playing. She was beautiful, ambitious, successful. People looked at us, at her, and then at me, and I could see the unspoken question in their eyes. Him? And in those moments, I felt special. Chosen. But that feeling came with a shadow, the constant, gnawing sense of inadequacy. Olivia was perfect, or so she seemed. Her life was curated, her career on a steep upward trajectory, and I was Dan. The guy who was still aspiring. The guy whose portfolio was nice. Our current dynamic was a well-rehearsed play. I'd spend my days at Synergy Solutions, my creativity wilting under fluorescent lights. Then I'd come home and try to impress Olivia. I'd cook elaborate meals, she was a foodie, find obscure indie films she hadn't seen, she was a cinephile, or present her with little sketches and design ideas, like offerings to a goddess. Sometimes she'd be pleased, a genuine smile, a kiss that felt like a reward. More often, though, her approval was tinged with critique. "This chicken is a little dry, Dan. Did you brine it?" Or, "That film was interesting, but the director's earlier work had more depth." Or, in the case of my portfolio, "It's nice, but—" And I'd nod and promise to try harder, to do better. Because her but was the chasm I was always trying to cross, the standard I was always failing to meet. I was working so hard to please her, to be the man I thought she wanted, while she, with a casual word, could dismantle my efforts, leaving me feeling small and clumsy. "Maybe you should focus on more corporate-friendly designs for a while," Olivia suggested now, closing the portfolio with a decisive snap. "Build a solid, safe book. Then you can experiment." "Right," I said, my voice hollow. "Safe." I picked up the portfolio, its weight suddenly immense. The vibrant colors seemed to mock me. I'd thought I was building a bridge to my dreams. Olivia had just shown me it was a tightrope, and I didn't have the balance for it. Not in her eyes, anyway. The dinner party was Olivia's idea, of course. Networking, she'd called it, with that bright, ambitious gleam in her eye that I'd once found so alluring. Now it mostly just made me feel tired. We were at a chic, overpriced restaurant with a handful of her colleagues, sleek, sharp people who talked in acronyms and revenue streams. I felt like I'd accidentally wandered onto the set of a different, much more successful movie. I tried to engage, to contribute. When Mark, a senior director with a booming laugh and an expensive watch, started talking about a new app struggling with user engagement, I saw an opening. "You know," I began, "I was thinking about an app interface the other day, and it struck me that intuitive navigation often comes down to minimizing cognitive load. Perhaps if they simplified their primary call to actions and used more visual cues." "Dan, honey," Olivia interjected, her smile tight as she placed a perfectly manicured hand on my arm. "Mark's team has probably already considered all the basics. They're looking for high-level strategic insights." She turned back to Mark, her voice smooth as silk. "Mark, what about a gamified loyalty program that could drive repeat engagement significantly?" My face burned. It wasn't just that she'd cut me off. It was the casual dismissal, the implication that my thoughts were amateurish, not worth hearing. I shrank back into my chair, stirring my water with a fork. This happened a lot. Me starting a sentence, Olivia finishing it or redirecting it, or subtly undermining it. It was like she had a remote control for my voice. Later, a woman named Sarah, a creative director with kind eyes and a genuinely warm smile, leaned across the table. She'd somehow heard my earlier, truncated comment. "Dan, that point about cognitive load was actually really insightful. We're finding a lot of younger demographics respond much better to visual-first navigation. What were your other thoughts on it?" I blinked, surprised. Actual interest. I started to explain my ideas, a small spark of enthusiasm reigniting within me. I saw Olivia across the table, her gaze fixed on me. There was no warmth in it, only a cool, appraising look that made the spark inside me flicker and dim. It was a look that said, "Don't get too big for your boots." The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of polite nods and forced smiles from my end. I felt like an imposter, a kid wearing his dad's oversized suit. Later that night back in our apartment, the silence was thick with unspoken things. I was pretending to read, but the words swam before my eyes. Olivia was in the bedroom on the phone. Her voice, usually modulated and controlled, was carrying. No, he's sweet, of course," she was saying. And I knew, with a sickening lurch, she was talking about me. But he's just not quite there professionally. Still figuring things out. It can be a bit draining, you know? Always trying to gently nudge him in the right direction. "Draining," My own girlfriend found me draining. The word echoed in the quiet apartment, each syllable a tiny hammer blow against my already bruised confidence. I waited until I heard the click of her phone disconnecting. Then I walked into the bedroom. She was sitting at her vanity, brushing her hair, her reflection cool and composed in the mirror. "Who were you talking to?" I asked, my voice rougher than I intended. "Just Chloe from work," she said, not meeting my eyes in the mirror. "And I'm draining, am I?" "Not quite there, professionally." She finally turned, her expression one of mild surprise, as if I'd overreacted to a dropped teaspoon. "Oh, you heard that? Dan, you can't take things so personally. I was just being honest with Chloe. We talk about everything." "Honest?" I felt a tremor of anger, rare for me. "Or just dismissive? You make me sound like some sort of project, something you have to fix." Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. "Well, aren't I trying to help you? I want you to succeed, Dan. All those little nudges, as you call them. That's me, trying to help you improve. You're talented, but you lack focus, ambition sometimes. Someone needs to push you. Push me, or make me feel like I'm constantly failing." The words were out before I could stop them. Her eyes hardened. "If you see constructive criticism as failure, then maybe that's the problem, Dan. Not my words." Constructive criticism. That's what she called it. But it felt different. It felt like a constant chipping away at who I was, until I was small enough to fit into the box she'd designed for me. I retreated, the familiar feeling of inadequacy washing over me. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I did need her help. It was easier to believe that than to face the terrifying possibility that the person who was supposed to love me most was the one making me feel the most worthless. The email landed in my inbox on a gray Tuesday morning. "Regarding the senior designer position." My heart leapt. I'd put in so many extra hours, taken on extra projects, volunteered for the tasks no one else wanted. I'd even, following Olivia's advice, made sure my recent internal presentations were corporate-friendly, dialing back my usual creative flair for something more. Synergy solutions. I clicked it open. "While we appreciate your dedication, decided to go with a candidate whose experience more closely aligns." The words blurred, passed over. Again. It wasn't even for a huge leap, just a small step up, a recognition of the work I was already doing. The fluorescent lights of the office suddenly felt unbearably harsh. I told Olivia that night, expecting, I don't know what. Comfort? Encouragement? A sympathetic ear? She listened, her expression thoughtful as she sipped her wine. "Well," she said finally, setting the glass down with a delicate click. "What do you think you did wrong in the interview? Did you come across as confident enough? Sometimes you can be a bit hesitant, Dan." Not, "That's terrible, honey, you deserved it." Not, "Don't worry, something better will come along." Just, "What did you do wrong?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. My failure, my fault. I thought the interview went well," I mumbled, deflation settling in my chest like a stone. She said. "Maybe you should ask for feedback. It's important to understand your weaknesses so you can work on them." My sister Emma visited that weekend. Emma was my opposite in many ways. Blunt where I was hesitant, fiery where I was reserved. She was a freelance photographer, always on the move, her life a vibrant, chaotic tapestry compared to my muted existence. She'd never been Olivia's biggest fan, a fact she made known through expertly aimed subtle barbs that usually flew right over Olivia's perfectly coiffed head. "So," Emma said, perched on our Olivia's designer sofa, her combat boots looking hilariously out of place on the pristine cream rug. Still letting synergy solutions suck the life out of you, big bro? It's a job, Em, I said, trying for a light tone. Olivia glided in with a tray of artisanal cheeses and gluten-free crackers. He's just feeling a bit down because he didn't get that promotion, Emma. But we're working on a strategy. He needs to be more assertive, project more authority. She smiled at me, a bright, encouraging smile that felt utterly false. Don't you, honey? I saw Emma's eyes narrow. She missed nothing. Throughout the afternoon, Emma watched. She watched as Olivia corrected a story I was telling, adding details I'd supposedly forgotten. She watched as Olivia gently steered the conversation away from my niche hobbies towards her own more impressive career achievements. She watched as Olivia complimented my cooking, then immediately suggested a culinary class I could take to really elevate my skills. Each comment was wrapped in a veneer of helpfulness, but Emma saw the steel beneath the velvet. Later, when Olivia was on a call in the study, Emma cornered me in the kitchen. "Dan, what the hell?" she said, her voice low and urgent. "What?" I asked, feigning innocence. "Her, Olivia. We're working on a strategy? He needs to be more assertive? Does she talk to you like you're a child or a badly trained puppy all the time?" I felt a flush creep up my neck. She's just trying to help, Em. She's ambitious. She wants me to be too. There's a difference between helping and constantly making someone feel like they're not good enough, Dan. Every single thing you do, she has a helpful suggestion for how you could do it better. Don't you see that? I bristled. You don't understand her. She's supportive. She pushes me. She pushes you down, Emma insisted, her eyes flashing. She's not supportive. She's controlling. She wants you to be some perfect accessory to her perfect life. And if you're not, she'll just keep chipping away at you until you are, or until there's nothing left. Her words were harsh, but they struck a chord, a dissonant, uncomfortable note deep inside me, but I couldn't admit it. Not to Emma, not even to myself, fully. Defending Olivia had become a reflex. You're wrong, I said, my voice tight. She loves me. Emma looked at me, her anger softening into a sad sort of pity. Does she, Dan? Or does she love the idea of who she can mold you into? Emma's words, her visit, had unsettled something. A crack had appeared in the carefully constructed facade of my relationship. That night after Emma left, the tension between Olivia and me was palpable. Your sister doesn't like me very much, does she? Olivia said, her voice cool as she applied her expensive night cream. She just doesn't understand our dynamic, I said, parroting a line I'd used before. Our dynamic? Olivia laughed, a short, humorless sound. You mean the dynamic where I'm constantly trying to help you get your life together and you resist me at every turn? That's not fair, Olivia, I snapped, the frustration finally boiling over. I try so damn hard to be what you want, to do what you want. I changed my portfolio, I acted more corporate for that promotion. I listened to all your advice. My advice? She repeated, turning to face me, her eyes like chips of ice. You call it advice, but you resent it. You think I'm criticizing you. Aren't you? I challenged, my voice rising. Everything I do, it's never quite good enough. My job, my hobbies, my passions, even the way I talk about things. It's always, Dan, you should... Or Dan, have you considered... When do I just get to be... me, and have that be okay for you? Her face hardened. Maybe you isn't cutting it, Dan. Maybe you needs to aim a little higher. Look at me. I work hard. I achieve things. I don't just sit around dreaming about innovative designs that no one will pay for. I make things happen, and I've been trying to get you to do the same. By making me feel inadequate? By being realistic, she shot back. You're 28 years old, Dan. When are you going to get serious? This aspiring designer thing is getting old. You have talent, yes, But talent isn't enough. You need drive. You need ambition. You need to be more. More. Always more. Never enough. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. "And what if I can't be more?" I whispered, the fight draining out of me, replaced by a vast, echoing emptiness. What if this is all I am?" Olivia looked at me then, a long, appraising look. There was no anger in her eyes now, just a cool, almost detached assessment. And then she said the words that would echo in my mind for months. The words that finally, irrevocably, broke something inside me. "Well," she said, her voice quiet, devoid of emotion. "Maybe this is as good as you get, Dan. As good as you get." The phrase was a period, a full stop to any hope I'd clung to that I could ever measure up. I stared at her, the woman I loved, the woman I'd twisted myself into knots to please, and saw not a partner, but a judge. And her verdict was in. I didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say. I turned and walked out of the bedroom, out of the apartment. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay there, not another minute, in the shadow of her disappointment. The carefully constructed walls of my denial had crumbled, and the truth, raw and painful, was laid bare. She didn't believe in me, and if she didn't, how could I? Jason's apartment was a comfortable chaos of old band posters, overflowing bookshelves, and the faint, lingering smell of instant ramen. It was a world away from the sterile perfection of the apartment I'd shared with Olivia. He opened the door in a faded t-shirt and pajama bottoms, his eyes widening when he saw me standing there, a single duffel bag at my feet, my face a mask of despair. "Dan? What's going on, man?" Words failed me. A choked sob escaped instead. Jason, bless his conflict-avoidant, loyal heart, just pulled me into a hug. Come in, couch is yours." I spent the next few days in a fog. Jason tiptoed around me, offering tea and platitudes, bless him. I replayed Olivia's words over and over. Maybe this is as good as you get. Each repetition was like a fresh stab. She'd taken my deepest fear, the one I barely dared to whisper to myself, and given it a voice. One afternoon, desperate to escape the confines of Jason's apartment and my own head, I found myself in a small, bustling coffee shop, my laptop open, a blank design file staring back at me. I'd brought my old portfolio, the one Olivia had dismissed as not professional enough. I just wanted to look at it, to remember a time when I'd felt a flicker of pride in my own work. I was sketching idly on a digital canvas, trying to lose myself in the lines and colors, when a voice startled me. "That's a really interesting use of negative space." I looked up. A man with a kind smile and thoughtful eyes stood beside my table, a half-empty coffee cup in his hand. He was maybe in his early 30s, dressed casually, but with an undeniable air of creative energy about him. "Oh, thanks," I stammered, instinctively trying to hide my screen. Old habits. "No, seriously," he said, nodding towards my laptop. "And that logo concept on the page before? The way the typography integrates with the icon? Clever." He'd seen my portfolio pages, which I'd left open next to my laptop. "You're a designer?" he asked. "Aspiring," I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "Well, I work at a marketing agency, but it's mostly banner ads." He chuckled. "The glamorous life, eh? I'm Marcus Wells." He extended a hand. "Dan Mercer." "Listen, Dan," Marcus said, his gaze direct. "I run a small design studio, Wells Design. We're swamped at the moment, and I've been looking for some freelance help. I really like your style. It's fresh, got a bit of an edge. Would you be interested in taking on a small project? Branding for a new sustainable coffee company?" I stared at him, stunned. Freelance work? Based on my designs? The ones Olivia had deemed too playful? Yes, I managed. Yes, definitely. Great. He pulled out a card. Send me your portfolio, the one you have there, and we can chat more tomorrow. Don't pretty it up for me, I like what I'm seeing. He smiled again and was gone, leaving me reeling, a spark, a tiny, hesitant spark of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope? Or maybe just possibility. My phone buzzed. Olivia. I ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Later that evening, back at Jason's, the calls kept coming. I finally answered, bracing myself. Dan? Where are you? Are you okay? Her voice was laced with an anxiety that sounded almost genuine. I'm at Jason's, I said, my voice flat. Jason's? Why? Dan, what's going on? You just walked out. I needed to, I said. Olivia, I can't do this anymore. Silence, then her voice shifted, the anxiety replaced by an icy anger. You can't do this anymore? What does that even mean? You're just going to throw away 2 years because of one argument? It wasn't just one argument, Olivia, and you know it. So you're breaking up with me? Just like that? Over the phone? Her voice was rising. I didn't have an answer for that. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I couldn't go back. Not now. I need some space, Olivia, to think. Then came the shift I hadn't expected. The anger dissolved, replaced by a softer tone, the one she used when she wanted to coax me into something. Dan, honey, come home. We can talk this through. I was harsh, I know. I was just frustrated. I didn't mean it like it sounded. Please, just come home. I almost wavered. The pull of the familiar, the desperate desire for things to be okay, even a fractured okay, was strong. But then I remembered Marcus Wells, his easy praise, the offer of work, a small, secret space that was mine, that Olivia hadn't touched, hadn't judged. I can't, Olivia, I said, and this time my voice was firmer. Not right now. I ended the call, my hand shaking. I hadn't told her about Marcus, about the freelance project. It was the first secret I'd kept from her. The first part of my life that wasn't under her critical gaze. And it felt liberating. Terrifying, but liberating. The freelance project for Marcus was like a breath of fresh air after years in a stuffy, windowless room. Sustainable coffee. The client wanted something earthy but modern, ethical but cool. I threw myself into it, sketching logos, playing with color palettes, designing packaging mock-ups. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was creating without a voice in my head telling me it wasn't good enough, wasn't professional enough, wasn't Olivia enough. I found myself working late into the night at Jason's kitchen table, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. The joy of it. The pure, unadulterated pleasure of making something, of solving a design problem, of seeing an idea come to life. It was a feeling I'd almost forgotten. I remembered all the times I'd dimmed my own creative light to fit Olivia's expectations. There was that indie game jam I'd wanted to participate in, but she'd called it a waste of a weekend when I could have been networking. Or the experimental animation course I'd signed up for, only to drop out after she'd questioned its career relevance. Each memory was a small, painful reminder of how I'd slowly, systematically given up pieces of myself to maintain our relationship. Jason, usually so cautious about expressing opinions on my personal life, finally opened up one evening as I was obsessing over a font pairing. You know, man, he said, swirling the beer in his bottle, I was never a huge fan of Olivia's. I looked up, surprised. You never said anything? He shrugged. Not my place. And you seemed happy. Or, you said you were, but she always seemed, I don't know, like she was trying to sculpt you into something else. Like you were a bonsai tree she was constantly pruning. A bonsai tree. The image was uncomfortably accurate. She always had that little dig, that little helpful comment, Jason continued. It drove me nuts, even if it wasn't directed at me. I'm glad you're out of there, Dan. Honestly, you seem lighter, even with all this crap going on. Lighter? He was right. Despite the emotional turmoil, the uncertainty of my future, there was a lightness, a sense of a burden lifted. Olivia and I agreed to meet. To talk things through, she'd said on the phone, her voice carefully neutral. We met at a park, a neutral territory. She looked stunning, as always, but there were faint shadows under her eyes. So, she began, her hands clasped in her lap. This break, is it what you really want? I don't know what I want, Olivia, I said honestly. But I know that what we had, it wasn't working for me. I felt like I was constantly failing. I know I can be critical, she conceded, a rare admission. But it comes from a place of wanting the best for you. For us. She reached out, her fingers brushing mine. I miss you, Dan. The apartment is empty. Her words, her touch, it was a powerful lure. The good times, the laughter, the intimacy, they weren't all illusions, were they? If you come back, she said, her voice soft, persuasive. If we try again, I need you to get serious about your career. My way. I have connections. I can help you find a role in a top-tier agency, something with real prestige. But you have to commit, Dan. No more of these passion projects that lead nowhere. Her way. There it was. The condition. The familiar box, just repackaged with a prettier bow. A part of me, the part that craved her approval, that was terrified of being alone, wanted to say yes, to just go back, to try harder, to be the man she wanted. But another part, a newer, more hesitant voice, whispered, What about Marcus? What about that feeling you had, designing for yourself? I need to think about it, Olivia, I said. She nodded, a flicker of disappointment in her eyes, but she kept her composure. Okay, Dan, think about it. But don't take too long. I walked away from that meeting, feeling more conflicted than ever. But beneath the confusion, there was a tiny, stubborn ember of resistance. The first real stirring of a desire to choose my own path, not the one Olivia had so carefully laid out for me. The freelance project for Marcus's studio, Wells Design, was consuming me in the best possible way. I submitted my initial concepts for the coffee branding, and Marcus's feedback was incredible. Not just praise, but constructive, insightful comments that pushed my work further, made it better, without making me feel inadequate. He saw potential, not flaws, to be fixed. This is strong, Dan, Marcus said during a video call, pointing to one of my logo iterations. I love the hand-drawn feel of the lettering. It really speaks to the artisanal nature of the brand. What if we explored a slightly more muted secondary color palette to let that primary mark really sing? It was a collaborative conversation, not a lecture. I found myself buzzing with ideas, my confidence slowly, tentatively, unfurling like a new leaf. One afternoon, I went into the Wells Design studio to go over some revisions. It was a small, vibrant space in a converted warehouse, exposed brick, lots of natural light, a creative hum in the air. That's when I met Zoe Parker. She was another freelance designer Marcus had brought in, working on a different project. She had a cascade of curly dark hair, paint smudges on her jeans, and an easy, infectious laugh. "Oh, you must be Dan," she said, extending a hand. "Marcus has been raving about your coffee branding concepts. They look amazing, by the way. I love the one with the little bean sprout incorporated into the O." Her praise was genuine, unforced. We chatted for a bit about design, about difficult clients, about the best place to get decent coffee in the neighborhood. Talking to her felt easy. There was no subtext, no judgment, just shared enthusiasm. Working with Marcus and occasionally bouncing ideas off Zoe, I started to see myself through different eyes. They valued my input. They respected my creative instincts. They weren't trying to change me or mold me. They just saw me, a designer. And they thought I was good. This newfound fragile confidence didn't go unnoticed by Olivia. We were still in that limbo phase. Occasional texts, short, strained phone calls. I was deliberately vague about how I was spending my days. "So, what are you actually doing all day, Dan?" she asked during one call, a sharp edge to her voice. "Still just thinking at Jason's?" "I'm keeping busy," I said noncommittally. "With what?" she pressed. "Are you even looking for a new job, or are you just moping?" "I'm working on some design stuff," I said. "Oh?" Her tone was skeptical. "Anything that might actually pay the bills?" Her suspicion, her immediate assumption that whatever I was doing was frivolous, it was a familiar sting. But this time it didn't crush me. It just made me sad for her. And a little angry. The constant self-doubt Olivia had instilled in me was a deep-seated weed. I knew I couldn't just yank it out and be done with it. On Jason's recommendation, I started seeing a therapist, a kind, insightful woman named Dr. Evans. "It sounds like your self-worth became very tied to Olivia's approval," Dr. Evans said in our second session. "I guess so," I admitted. "When she was happy with me, I felt good. When she wasn't, I felt worthless. That's a heavy burden for any relationship to carry, Dan, and a heavy burden for you." Slowly, painfully, I began to unpack the patterns of our relationship. The subtle put-downs disguised as helpful advice, the way she'd isolate me from friends or activities she didn't approve of, the constant feeling of walking on eggshells. Dr. Evans called it emotional manipulation, a term that made me uncomfortable, but also resonated with a sickening clarity. A few weeks later, Marcus called me into his office. "Dan," he said, leaning back in his chair, a smile playing on his lips. "The coffee client loved the final branding, absolutely loved it. They're already talking about phase 2. A wave of relief and pride washed over me. That's fantastic." "It is," Marcus agreed. "And it's down to your work. You have a real talent, Dan. And more than that, you're a pleasure to work with. Which brings me to this." He leaned forward. "I've been thinking. The studio's growing. I need a full-time designer I can rely on. Someone with a fresh perspective. The position is yours, if you want it. A full-time job, at Wells Design, doing creative work I loved, with people who respected me. It was everything I'd ever wanted. A dream I'd almost let Olivia convince me was out of reach." "Marcus, I don't know what to say," I stammered, my heart pounding. Yes, I want it." I had to tell Olivia it felt like a test. Maybe, just maybe, she'd be happy for me. I met her for coffee. I laid it all out, the freelance work, Marcus's mentorship, the job offer. She listened, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she took a slow sip of her latte. "Wells Design?" she said, her nose wrinkling slightly. "Never heard of them. Is it one of those little boutique places?" "They're up and coming," I said, trying to keep the defensiveness out of my voice. "They do great work." "But Dan," she said, her voice laced with that familiar, patronizing concern. "Is it stable? A small studio like that, it's risky. What about benefits? A proper career path? You were on track to get something solid in the corporate world. This feels like a step down, doesn't it? More of a hobby than a career." A step down? My dream job, the first real validation of my talent? And she called it a step down? And just like that, the pattern was clear. so blindingly, painfully clear. Anything I achieved on my own terms, anything that didn't fit her definition of success, was to be diminished, dismissed. Dr. Evans' words about emotional manipulation echoed in my ears. This was it. This was her way of keeping me small, keeping me dependent on her definition of worth. "No, Olivia," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "It's not a step down, it's a step up, for me." She looked taken aback by my firmness. "Dan, be realistic." "I am being realistic," I said. "I'm being realistic about what I want and what makes me happy. And this job, this makes me happy." Her eyes narrowed. "So you're choosing this little studio over a real future? Over us?" The ultimatum. I'd almost been expecting it. The choice she'd always wanted me to make, her way or no way. For years I would have crumbled. I would have apologized, backtracked, done anything to avoid her disapproval, but something had shifted. The sessions with Dr. Evans, Marcus's belief in me, Zoe's easy acceptance, the quiet joy of creating on my own terms, they'd built a small, fragile wall of self-worth inside me. I looked at Olivia, really looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't see a goddess to be worshipped or a judge to be feared. I saw a woman, beautiful and ambitious, yes, but also deeply insecure, someone who needed to control everything around her to feel safe. "I'm choosing me, Olivia," I said quietly. "I'm choosing my own path." Her face, for a fleeting second, showed a flicker of something I'd never seen before. Shock? Or maybe fear? Then it was gone, replaced by a cool mask of indignation. "Fine," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Fine. But don't come running back to me when your little dream job falls apart and you realize what you've thrown away." She stood up, her chair scraping against the floor, and walked out of the coffee shop, head held high. I watched her go, a strange mix of sadness and relief washing over me. Sadness for the good memories, for the love I thought we'd had. But relief, overwhelming relief, that I was finally free. I had chosen. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I might actually be enough for myself. Starting at Wells Design was like stepping into a different dimension. The work was challenging, creative, and incredibly rewarding. Marcus was a true mentor, pushing me to experiment, to take risks, to find my own voice as a designer. My colleagues, including Zoe, were supportive, collaborative, and genuinely fun to be around. I was thriving. My confidence, no longer a fragile seedling, was starting to put down roots. My work was getting noticed. Clients were happy. Marcus was impressed. I even started sketching some of my own passion projects again in the evenings, not for validation, but for the sheer joy of it. Then, about a month into my new job, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. It was Olivia. My heart did a weird little flip. "Dan?" Her voice was softer than I remembered, hesitant. "Hi, it's Olivia." "Hi," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. I was just wondering how you were. How's the new job?" Shocked. She actually sounded interested? Or was it a trap? "It's good," I said carefully. "Really good, actually." "Oh." A pause. "That's nice." This was the beginning of her campaign. The calls became more frequent. Texts peppered with casual questions about my day, little thinking of you messages. She started to sound supportive. She'd ask about my projects, offer seemingly genuine encouragement. "That sounds really innovative, Dan," she said one evening, when I, caught off guard, told her about a particularly exciting branding project I was leading. You always had such a unique way of looking at things." I was conflicted. A part of me, the old, approval-seeking Dan, wanted desperately to believe she'd changed. I remembered the good times, the laughter, the early days when her ambition had felt inspiring, not suffocating. Had I misjudged her? Had our breakup been a wake-up call for her too? The thought was dangerously alluring. Maybe we could find a new way, a healthier way. But another part of me, the part that had spent hours with Dr. Evans dissecting our toxic dynamic, was wary. This sudden turnaround felt strategic. "So, are you, getting back together?" Jason asked one night, noticing the increased frequency of Olivia's name in my reluctant recaps of phone calls. No, I don't think so," I said, perhaps a little too quickly. "We're just talking." Emma, when I mentioned it to her, was less diplomatic. "Dan, don't be an idiot. Leopards don't change their spots that fast. She's reeling you back in. It's what she does." Their concerns echoed my own, but the pull of Olivia's apparent change was strong. She was beautiful, familiar, and for the first time, she was making an effort. A significant effort. I agreed to meet her. Casually. Coffee. Then a walk in the park a few days later. She looked incredible, of course, but more than that, she seemed different. Softer? She asked about my work at Wells Design with what appeared to be genuine interest, nodding, asking follow-up questions, not offering a single piece of constructive criticism. She talked about her own job, but not in the usual way that made me feel small. She even laughed at one of my stupid jokes, a real unguarded laugh that reminded me of the woman I'd first fallen for. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, Dan," she said during our walk. "About us. About me. I wasn't always fair to you. I see that now. I let my own ambition cloud things." It was like a dream. The words I'd longed to hear for years. Meanwhile, my connection with Zoe at work was growing. We'd grab lunch sometimes, bounce ideas off each other. There was an easy chemistry between us, a shared passion for design, a similar, quirky sense of humor. Nothing had happened, not even close, but there was an unspoken something, a potential. It made my feelings about Olivia even more complicated. Zoe represented everything that felt healthy and supportive, a stark contrast to the emotional roller coaster Olivia had always been. But Olivia was a master of her craft. She knew my weaknesses, knew how much I craved her approval, and slowly, subtly, I felt myself starting to slip back into old patterns. I'd find myself choosing my words carefully around her, anticipating her reactions, subtly seeking that nod, that smile, that sign that I was doing okay in her eyes. The old dance. I was leading with my work successes, almost preening for her, and she was responding with just the right amount of praise to keep me hooked. The gallery event was a big deal for Wells Design. We'd collaborated with a local arts collective, and a few pieces of our recent branding work, including the coffee project I'd spearheaded, were being featured. Marcus insisted I come, even though I usually shied away from schmoozy industry events. "You deserve to take a bow, Dan," he'd said. On a whim, feeling a confusing mix of hope and trepidation, I invited Olivia. If she'd truly changed, this would be a chance for her to see my success, to be genuinely proud. "I'd love to," she'd said, her voice warm. She arrived looking like $1,000,000, effortlessly elegant. Initially, she was everything I'd hoped for. She admired my work, her hand resting lightly on my arm. "Dan, this is incredible," she murmured, looking at the display for the coffee brand. "It's so you, but also so professional. I'm really proud." My heart swelled. Maybe Emma and Jason were wrong. Maybe she had changed. People started to congratulate me. Marcus introduced me to a few influential bloggers and creative directors. I found myself talking about my design process with a confidence I hadn't possessed a few months ago. Olivia stayed by my side, smiling, nodding, the picture of a supportive partner. Then, I excused myself to grab us some drinks. As I was waiting at the bar, I overheard a familiar laugh. Olivia. She was standing with a woman I vaguely recognized as one of her old colleagues, her back to me. "Yes, he's doing so much better now," Olivia was saying, her voice carrying in the noisy room. "He was a bit lost for a while, you know? After we took a break. Bless him. This little studio job is good for him, keeps him busy. I'm just trying to gently guide him back towards reality, help him see where his real strengths lie. He has potential, but he needs a firm hand." Guide him back to reality. A firm hand. The old vocabulary. The old Olivia. The glasses in my hand suddenly felt very cold. The warmth, the hope I'd been nursing, turned to ice in my veins. It was all an act. The supportive calls, the compliments, the apologies. A carefully orchestrated performance designed to reel me back in, to regain control. I walked back over to her, my face a mask. "Olivia?" She turned, her smile bright, faltering slightly when she saw my expression. "Dan, I was just telling Sarah how wonderful your work is." "Were you?" I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Or were you telling her how you're gently guiding me back to reality?" The color drained from her face. Sarah looked acutely uncomfortable and quickly mumbled an excuse to leave. We were alone, the buzz of the gallery fading around us. "Dan, she began, but I cut her off. "All this time," I said, the hurt and anger a raw wound in my voice. "All those calls, the support, the 'I'm proud of you's. Was any of it real?" She looked away, then back at me, her composure cracking. I do care about you, Dan." "Care about me or care about controlling me? Which version of me do you prefer, Olivia? The one who's thriving, who's finding his own way? Or the one who needed you to tell him he was good enough? The one you could mold?" Tears welled in her eyes, but I saw them for what they were. Not necessarily tears of remorse, but tears of frustration. Her plan had failed. "It was easier when you needed me," she whispered, the admission finally, painfully out. "I knew how to help you then." "Help me or keep me small enough so you felt big." She flinched, but didn't deny it. And in that moment, I saw it all. The entire dynamic of our relationship stripped bare, her fear of not being in control, her need to be the superior one. My desperate need for her validation, a need she had expertly exploited. The sadness was immense. But underneath it, something else was stirring, a cold, hard clarity. The last vestiges of hope for us died in that gallery, surrounded by the evidence of what I could achieve when I wasn't living in her shadow. "I think," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, "we're done here, Olivia, for good." I turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone amidst the celebration of a success she couldn't truly share, because it wasn't hers to direct. I didn't look back. The aftermath of the gallery revelation was surprisingly peaceful. There was a finality to it that hadn't been there before. Cutting ties with Olivia this time felt less like a painful amputation, and more like setting down a heavy, awkward burden I'd been carrying for far too long. She tried calling, texting, a few desperate voicemails filled with a confusing mix of apologies and accusations. I didn't engage. Dr. Evans helped me see it as the last throes of a dying dynamic, her attempts to reassert control. I blocked her number. It felt like closing a door, quietly but firmly, on a chapter of my life that needed to end. With Olivia truly out of the picture, I poured all my energy into my work, into my growth. I took on bigger projects at Wells Design, pushing my creative boundaries. Marcus became more than a boss. He was a mentor, guiding me, challenging me. He saw the spark in me that Olivia had tried to extinguish and fanned it into a flame. We started working on a pitch for a major new client, a tech startup that wanted a brand identity that was both innovative and approachable. It was the biggest challenge of my career so far, and I was terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. Therapy continued to be my anchor. Dr. Evans helped me navigate the residual self-doubt, the ingrained habit of seeking external validation. "Your worth isn't determined by someone else's approval, Dan," she'd remind me. "It's inherent." Slowly, I was starting to believe her. I also began to repair the relationships that had suffered during my time with Olivia. I spent more time with Emma, who was, of course, smugly triumphant but also incredibly supportive. "Told ya," she said, punching my arm playfully. "But seriously, bro, you seem like you again, only better." Jason and I fell back into our easy camaraderie, no longer tiptoeing around the subject of my toxic relationship. About 3 months after the gallery incident, there was a big industry networking event. I almost didn't go, but Marcus encouraged me. "You need to be seen, Dan. Your work is starting to get noticed." As I was awkwardly nursing a drink, trying to look like I belonged, I saw her. Olivia? She was across the crowded room, with a new guy, someone tall, generically handsome in an expensive suit. She looked radiant, laughing a little too loudly. And then she saw me. Her smile faltered for a split second, her eyes locking onto mine. There was a flicker of something: surprise, annoyance, before her composed mask slipped back into place. She was clearly watching me, though, even as she turned back to her date. The old Olivia, always aware of her audience. Then, the universe decided to throw us a curveball. Marcus found out that the major client we were pitching to, the tech startup, had also invited Olivia's high-powered marketing firm to present. We were in direct competition. My stomach clenched. The thought of facing her professionally, of her potentially being in a position to critique my work again, was unnerving. "Don't let it get to you, Dan," Marcus said, sensing my anxiety. "Your concepts are strong. We're strong. Focus on that." A few days before the pitch, Olivia accidentally bumped into me at a coffee shop near my office. Too much of a coincidence. "Dan, fancy seeing you here," she said, all bright smiles and feigned surprise. "Olivia," I nodded, keeping it cool. "So," she said, stirring her latte with unnecessary vigor, "I hear we're going head-to-head on the Innovatech account. Small world, huh?" "I guess so." "It's a tough client," she continued, her eyes flicking over me, appraising. "They're looking for real heavy hitters. Not sure a smaller studio will have the resources they need. But good luck anyway. It'll be an experience for you." There it was. The subtle dig, the attempt to undermine my confidence, just like old times. Not professional enough, not experienced enough, not enough. But this time, it was different. I recognized the tactic. I saw it for what it was, her insecurity, her need to feel superior. I just smiled. "Thanks, Olivia. We're actually feeling pretty good about it. Our team has some really fresh ideas." Her smile tightened. She hadn't expected the easy confidence. "Well," she said, "may the best team win." She gave a little wave and walked away, her heels clicking decisively on the polished floor. I watched her go, a strange sense of calm settling over me. She'd tried to rattle me, and she'd failed. The old strings she used to pull? They'd been cut. Pitch day. The boardroom was intimidating, all gleaming mahogany and panoramic city views. The Innovatech executives sat stone-faced, their expressions unreadable. Olivia's team presented before us. I caught snippets from the hallway. It was slick, corporate, full of buzzwords and impressive-sounding metrics. Very Olivia. Then, it was our turn. Marcus gave the introduction, and then he handed it over to me to walk them through our creative concepts. My heart was pounding, but as I started to speak, to share the vision we'd developed, a sense of focus descended. I wasn't thinking about Olivia or about proving anything to anyone but the client. I was just talking about design, about connection, about building a brand with soul. Our approach was different, more human-centric, more focused on storytelling, less on corporate jargon. I could see a few of the executives starting to lean in, to nod. We finished. The silence in the room was heavy. Then, the CEO of Innovatech, a woman known for her sharp intellect and no-nonsense attitude, smiled. A genuine, wide smile. "That," she said, "was refreshing. You actually sound like you understand our users, not just our market share." Later that afternoon, the call came. We'd won. Wells Design had beaten out Olivia's powerhouse firm for the Innovatech contract. The cheer that went up in our small studio could have probably been heard across town. Marcus clapped me on the back, beaming. Zoe gave me a high five, her eyes sparkling. It wasn't just a win, it was a validation of everything we were trying to build. As we were celebrating at a nearby bar that evening, my phone rang. Olivia. I hesitated, then stepped outside. "Well, congratulations, Dan," she said, her voice tight. There was no warmth, no pretense of sportsmanship, just thinly veiled resentment. "Thanks, Olivia," I said calmly. "I have to say I'm surprised," she continued. "They usually go for a more established agency, someone with a proven track record." The familiar refrain. I almost laughed. "Maybe they were looking for something new," I suggested. Then her tone shifted, oscillating wildly. "You know, I always knew you had potential, Dan. I pushed you because I saw it. Maybe if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have even—" She was trying to take credit for my success, after everything. The old Dan would have argued or wilted, but the Dan I was becoming just felt a kind of weary compassion. "I appreciate the thought, Olivia," I said, my voice gentle. "But this was our team's win, and I'm really proud of what we accomplished." No anger, no bitterness, just a simple statement of fact. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. My lack of fight, my calm confidence, it had disarmed her more effectively than any argument could have. "Right," she finally said, her voice small. "Well, goodbye, Dan." "Goodbye, Olivia." I hung up, a faint smile on my lips. I hadn't needed to diminish her or to fight. I had simply stood in my own truth, and that, I realized, was more powerful than any victory over her. My growth wasn't about beating Olivia, it was about outgrowing the need for her to define me in any way at all. 6 months later. I'm sitting in my own small, sunlit apartment, a step up from Jason's couch, but still comfortably mine, filled with my books, my art, and the lingering scent of good coffee. A copy of a prestigious design magazine lies open on my coffee table, a feature on emerging talent with a 2-page spread on Wells Design, prominently showcasing the Innovatech branding. My work, my name, my distinctive style, once dismissed as too playful, is now being called innovative and human-centered. I'm building a reputation, not by chasing trends, but by staying true to my own creative instincts. The self-doubt still whispers sometimes, a faint echo from the past, but its voice is weaker now, easily overridden by the quiet confidence that comes from doing work I love, and doing it well. Zoe and I are something. Something good. It's easy, supportive, built on mutual respect and a shared love for bad puns and good design. There's no drama, no manipulation, Just a comfortable warmth that feels like coming home. We're taking it slow, but it feels right. It feels healthy. I run into Olivia at an industry conference. It's inevitable in our line of work. She's alone this time, standing by the canapes, looking a little lost. She spots me and makes a beeline, a polite, strained smile on her face. "Dan, you're looking well." "You too, Olivia." There's an awkward pause. Then she says it, the thing I almost expect. "You know, when I look back, I think we were good for each other, in a way. I pushed you softened me. Maybe we both grew." It's her attempt at rewriting history, at finding some shared, positive narrative. The old me might have been tempted to agree, to smooth over the rough edges for the sake of politeness. But I just smile, a genuine, uncomplicated smile. I definitely grew, Olivia, and I'm grateful for the lessons. The implication is clear. The lessons were learned in her absence, despite her, not because of her. I no longer need her validation, or anyone else's, to define my journey. My worth comes from within, from the joy of creation, from the connections I build, from the person I am becoming. She nods, a flicker of understanding, or maybe just resignation, in her eyes. "Well, good to see you." "You too." Later that evening, I'm back in my studio, a new project open on my screen. It's a pro bono branding for a small animal shelter Emma connected me with. The pay is non-existent, but the creative freedom is immense. Music plays softly. The city lights twinkle outside my window. I'm completely absorbed, lost in the flow of lines and colors, the hum of ideas taking shape. The shadow of Olivia's never enough no longer darkens my doorway. I am more than she could ever handle, not because I'm trying to prove her wrong, but because I've finally, truly proven myself right. I am enough. I am more than enough. And in the quiet satisfaction of my own creative absorption, I am at last completely at peace.